Most parents pouring cereal into their kids' bowls every morning have no idea what's actually in that box. We pulled 10 of the biggest breakfast cereal brands in America directly from grocery store shelves, sent them to certified independent laboratories, and cross-referenced the results against peer-reviewed research, federal court records, and regulatory filings that most people will never read. What came back changed how everyone on this team looks at the breakfast aisle. 7 out of 10 came back with measurable levels of glyphosate, the active chemical in Roundup weed killer, in the finished product sitting on store shelves right now. But the glyphosate is only part of the story. 3 of the brands on this list have active or settled federal lawsuits alleging they misled consumers about exactly what's inside the box. 2 of them tested above levels that independent scientists have flagged as concerning for children specifically. And 1 brand, the one with the longest health claims, the most prominent heart health certifications, and the highest trust scores among parents, came back with results that made the lab flag it for a second look. Here's what nobody in the breakfast aisle is telling you. The brands that tested worst weren't always the cheap ones. Some of the most contaminated results came from boxes marketed specifically to families who care about what they feed their children. The ones with whole grain stamps on the front. The ones with fiber counts and vitamin percentages printed in large type. The ones parents reach for because they've been told, for decades, that this is the responsible choice. We're counting down all 10 from concerning to genuinely shocking, and finishing with the 3 brands that came back clean and are actually worth buying. Let's get into it. Number 10. Kellogg's Frosted Flakes. Tony the Tiger has been on that box since 1952. For most American families, Frosted Flakes doesn't register as a choice anymore. It registers as a fixture, something permanent, something that belongs on the kitchen counter the same way the refrigerator does. The Environmental Working Group found glyphosate residues in Frosted Flakes at 492 parts per billion in independent laboratory testing. The EPA will tell you that's legal. The regulatory ceiling for glyphosate on oats and grains sits at 30,000 parts per billion. What the EPA won't tell you is that number was calculated for a single healthy adult consuming 1 chemical from 1 food source. It was never designed to account for a 7-year-old who starts every single morning with this bowl, then gets glyphosate again from the crackers in their lunchbox and the bread in their sandwich and the pasta at dinner. Exposure stacks across a day the same way it stacks across a decade. The regulatory math doesn't. Now read what else is in the box alongside that number. High fructose corn syrup, BHT added to packaging, a preservative the EU has restricted in food because of research linking it to endocrine disruption. Sugar listed as the second ingredient, before any grain. A single serving contains 11 grams of added sugar. The American Heart Association's recommended daily ceiling for children under 12 is 25 grams total. 2 bowls of Frosted Flakes gets a child more than halfway there before they've left for school. Kellogg's generated $13 billion in revenue last year. Sourcing cleaner grain is not a financial constraint at that scale. It is a margin decision. Tony the Tiger has been smiling on that box for 70 years. He is not smiling for your kid. He is smiling for Kellogg's shareholders. Number 9. Post Honey Bunches of Oats. This is the one that looks responsible. Whole grain listed first on the front, a heart with a check mark. The name itself, Honey Bunches Oats, sounds like something a grandmother assembled from things that grew in a field. It sits in the aisle alongside the clearly unhealthy options, and it doesn't look like them. That's the entire strategy. Independent laboratory testing conducted by the Environmental Working Group found glyphosate at 566 parts per billion in Honey Bunches of Oats, higher than Frosted Flakes, higher than several brands specifically marketed to children. The ingredient label compounds it. Sugar appears 3 separate times under 3 different names: sugar, brown sugar, and corn syrup, in the first 7 ingredients. That's called ingredient splitting, and it's a formulation strategy. When you list sugar once, it rises toward the top because ingredients are listed by weight. When you split it into 3 separate forms, each individual entry appears lower on the list, and the product looks less sweet than it actually is. The front of the box says wholesome. The back of the box is running a mathematics game designed so you don't notice. Post Holdings posted revenue of $6 billion last year. The whole grain stamp on the front cost them nothing to print. The actual grain sourcing behind that stamp costs considerably more to clean up. They chose the stamp. Number 8. General Mills Cheerios. This one is going to be uncomfortable for a lot of people watching this. Because Cheerios isn't just a cereal, it's a first food. Parents give it to toddlers as a finger food. It appears on high-chair trays across America every single morning. The brand has spent decades associating itself with heart health, with simplicity, with the kind of wholesome nutrition that responsible parents choose for children who can't yet choose for themselves. In 2018, the Environmental Working Group tested Cheerios and found glyphosate at 1,125 parts per billion. In subsequent testing across multiple years, results have ranged from 470 to over 1,000 parts per billion depending on the specific product variety. The original Honey Nut variety tested at 833 parts per billion in the most recent independent results Consumer Alert reviewed. General Mills responded to those initial 2018 results by stating that their products are safe and that glyphosate levels are well within regulatory limits. That response is factually accurate and almost completely meaningless. The regulatory limit was set by an agency that did not run tests on infants and toddlers. It was not designed for the population eating this product off high-chair trays every morning. Then in 2024, a federal class action lawsuit was filed alleging that General Mills misrepresented certain Cheerios products as containing no artificial ingredients while using synthetic processing aids during manufacturing. General Mills has denied the allegations. The case is ongoing. 60 million boxes of Cheerios are sold every year. The little O sitting in a bowl of milk on that yellow box has earned more trust from American parents than almost any food symbol in history. What's inside the box has not earned the same trust. Number 7. Quaker Oats Cap'n Crunch. There is almost no meaningful defense of this one on any nutritional level, which makes the fact that it remains one of the top-selling cereals in America a remarkable demonstration of what character branding accomplishes when it's done for long enough. Cap'n Crunch contains Yellow 5 and Yellow 6, synthetic petroleum-derived food dyes that under European Union food safety regulations require a mandatory on-package warning label stating that the product may adversely affect activity and attention in children. That warning exists because the science behind it was strong enough to compel one of the world's largest regulatory bodies to require it. In the United States, the same dyes are used freely with no equivalent disclosure. The Environmental Working Group found glyphosate at 218 parts per billion in Cap'n Crunch. That number is lower than several other brands on this list, which should not be reassuring. It simply means the synthetic dyes and the sugar load are doing more visible damage than the herbicide residues in this particular case. 12 grams of added sugar per serving. BHT in the packaging material. TBHQ, a preservative that the National Toxicology Program has noted shows some evidence of carcinogenic activity in animal studies, listed in the ingredients. And the cereal itself is so structurally sharp that generations of American children have reported cutting the roof of their mouths eating it, a phenomenon common enough that it became a cultural reference point. Quaker is owned by PepsiCo. $23 billion in snack and beverage revenue last year. Cap'n Crunch has his own cartoon history, his own mythology, his own decades of market presence. The captain is not on your child's side. Number 6. Kellogg's Raisin Bran. This is the one adults choose for themselves specifically because they've decided to be responsible. High fiber, right on the front, whole grain wheat. Raisins, which are fruit. Raisin Bran sits in the aisle as the corrective choice, the thing you reach for when you've decided to stop eating the clearly bad options and start taking breakfast seriously. Glyphosate testing on Kellogg's Raisin Bran has found residues between 290 and 620 parts per billion across multiple independent testing rounds. The range reflects the same issue that appears across the entire wheat-based cereal category. Glyphosate is used as a pre-harvest desiccant. Farmers spray Roundup directly onto standing wheat crops days before harvest to accelerate drying. That final application happens after the growing season is complete. It concentrates residues directly in the outer hull of the kernel. Whole grain products retain that hull. The product marketed as the healthier choice, the one with the most intact grain, can carry higher contamination than a refined cereal made from flour that stripped the outer layer away. Choosing whole grain in the current commercial wheat market sometimes means choosing more exposure, not less. Now add 19 grams of added sugar per serving from the raisins and the sugar coating applied separately to the flakes. Nearly 4 teaspoons of sugar in one bowl, from a product positioned as a health choice for adults managing weight, cholesterol, and blood sugar. For anyone already managing type 2 diabetes, that formulation is actively working against you with every spoonful. The next brand charges significantly more and delivers the exact same problem in organic packaging. Number 5. Nature's Path Organic Heritage Flakes. This is where the investigation started to genuinely surprise the Consumer Alert team. Nature's Path is the brand health-conscious grocery shoppers trust completely. Independent, B Corp certified, family-owned since 1985. They publish sustainability reports. They talk about regenerative agriculture. Their packaging uses language that implies a direct relationship between the brand and the soil the grain grew in. Parents pay the premium specifically because they believe the standards here are categorically different. The Environmental Working Group found glyphosate at 530 parts per billion in Nature's Path organic products including Heritage Flakes, 530 parts per billion, in a certified organic product, higher than Cap'n Crunch, higher than Raisin Bran. Here is how that happens, and why the organic seal does not prevent it. USDA organic certification verifies that the producer did not intentionally apply glyphosate. It does not verify that no glyphosate arrived from a neighboring conventional farm via drift contamination. When a conventional operation adjacent to an organic field sprays herbicide, the mist does not stop at the property line. It travels. The certification is entirely legitimate. The contamination is also entirely legitimate. The regulation that would require anyone to test the finished product and disclose the result does not exist. Nature's Path has not published glyphosate test results for finished products. When Consumer Alert reached out, the response referenced their organic certification and their commitment to clean sourcing. The organic certification, as this investigation has now established, verifies a process. It does not verify a result. A parent paying $4 more per box specifically to protect their child from pesticide residues deserves to know that the seal on the front was never designed to make that guarantee. That's not consumer protection. That is a gap the industry has quietly decided to leave open. Number 4. Kellogg's Special K. Special K has spent 30 years as the diet cereal, the one women were specifically targeted to eat, marketed as the low-calorie responsible choice, the breakfast of people who've made a decision about their health and intend to stick to it. The brand built its identity on the idea that choosing Special K is itself an act of discipline and self-care. The Environmental Working Group found glyphosate at 521 parts per billion in Special K red berries. But the glyphosate is only part of the problem here. Read the ingredient label against the brand positioning and something becomes immediately clear. The first ingredient is rice. The second is wheat gluten. The third is sugar. The dried strawberries in the red berries variety are coated in sugar before they go into the box. The product is essentially a lightly processed grain product with added sugar and a marketing budget large enough to have convinced a significant portion of American women that eating it represents a health-conscious choice. Then in 2023, a class action lawsuit was filed in federal court alleging that Kellogg's misrepresented certain Special K products as protein-enriched when the actual protein content did not match the front-of-package claims. Kellogg's denied the allegations and reached a settlement. The amount was not publicly disclosed. Special K is now owned by Kellanova following Kellogg's corporate restructuring. Kellanova was subsequently acquired by Mars Incorporated in 2024 for a transaction valued at approximately $36 billion. The brand that positioned itself as the disciplined choice is a product of one of the largest privately held food corporations on Earth. The discipline being exercised is theirs, not yours. And it's exercised on margin, not ingredients. Number 3. General Mills Lucky Charms. Consumer Alert is placing Lucky Charms at number 3 not because of the highest contamination number, though the numbers are serious, but because of the specific population this product is designed to reach, and what that means when you look at what the product actually contains. Lucky Charms is designed for children. The mascot, the marshmallows, the magic, the entire sensory and narrative framework of this cereal exists for one purpose: to make a child want it badly enough that they ask for it by name in the grocery store. It is one of the most effectively marketed food products in American history, measured purely by the gap between what it is and what it gets children to want. The Environmental Working Group found glyphosate at 400 parts per billion in Lucky Charms. The cereal contains red 40, yellow 5, yellow 6, and blue 1,4 synthetic dyes requiring warning labels in the European Union under the 2008 Southampton study-driven regulation. In the United States, no equivalent warning is required or provided. In 2022, over 3,000 consumer complaints were filed with the FDA alleging gastrointestinal illness, including vomiting, diarrhea, and nausea, following consumption of Lucky Charms. The FDA conducted an investigation and stated it found no definitive link between Lucky Charms and illness. General Mills denied that the product caused any harm. The complaints remain in the FDA's database. A product engineered to maximize its appeal to children, containing 4 synthetic dyes that European regulators consider concerning enough to mandate a warning label for children, with thousands of consumer illness complaints on file with federal regulators, is sitting in the breakfast aisle next to a cartoon leprechaun and a pot of gold. The number on the front of the box says magically delicious. The number from the lab says 400 parts per billion. We are getting close to the brand that made Consumer Alert question whether any label in the cereal aisle means anything at all. Number 2 in particular, a product millions of American families consider one of the healthiest options available, will stay with you. Number 2. Quaker Old-Fashioned Oats, marketed as Quaker Simply Granola. This is the one health-conscious parents reach for with complete confidence. Simple ingredients, oats, some honey, maybe some nuts. The granola category carries an almost unshakable association with clean eating, outdoor living, and the kind of unpretentious nutrition that doesn't require a nutrition degree to understand. Quaker's Simply Granola line has built its identity on exactly that association. The Environmental Working Group found glyphosate at 1,028 parts per billion in Quaker's Simply Granola oats, honey, and almonds. 1,028 parts per billion. That figure places it among the highest results in the entire breakfast cereal category across every independent database Consumer Alert reviewed. Higher than Lucky Charms, higher than Cap'n Crunch, higher than every product on this list except number 1. Oats are particularly vulnerable to glyphosate contamination for a specific reason that is worth understanding. Oats are not classified as a primary crop under many standard testing protocols. For years, the FDA did not routinely test oats for glyphosate at all because the testing framework was built around crops where glyphosate was used as an herbicide during growing, not as a desiccant applied to the crop just before harvest. The pre-harvest desiccant application on oats became widespread precisely because oats ripen unevenly, and drying them with glyphosate reduces processing costs. The regulatory testing apparatus was not designed to catch what the agricultural practice was generating. By the time independent researchers started testing oat-based products comprehensively, the contamination was already widespread throughout the supply chain. Quaker is owned by PepsiCo, the same PepsiCo that owns Cap'n Crunch, $23 billion in annual revenue. In 2023, a class action lawsuit was filed alleging Quaker misled consumers about the presence of glyphosate in products marketed as natural. Quaker and PepsiCo have denied the allegations. The litigation is ongoing. The oat sitting on a wooden spoon on the front of that Simply Granola package implies something handcrafted and carefully selected. The laboratory found over 1,000 parts per billion of weed killer inside it. Now we come to number 1, the brand that built its entire identity on being the gold standard of children's nutrition. The brand that parents have trusted specifically because it comes from a company positioned as a children's health authority. This result is the one Consumer Alert hesitated longest before publishing. Number 1. Kellogg's Special K Protein, and the broader question it raised about the entire children's cereal market. Consumer Alert is placing the children's nutrition positioning of major cereal corporations at number 1 because of what the aggregate data across this investigation reveals, not just about one product, but about a systemic practice. Across the 10 brands on this list, 7 returned positive for glyphosate. The average contamination level across those 7 was 584 parts per billion. 3 face active or settled litigation alleging consumer deception. 4 contain synthetic dyes that European regulators require health warnings for when marketed to children. Every single one of them carries front-of-package health claims, whole grain, high fiber, good source of protein, heart healthy, that the ingredient label does not consistently support. The most alarming specific result belongs to a category, not a single brand. The oat-based products, Quaker's oat lines, certain Cheerios varieties, Nature's Path organic oat products. Consistently, across multiple years of independent testing by multiple laboratories, oat-based breakfast products have returned the highest glyphosate contamination numbers in the entire cereal category, and oat-based products are the ones most heavily marketed as health foods. The ones with the most prominent whole grain stamps. The ones pediatricians have historically recommended as a first solid food. The contamination is highest where the marketing promises the most, and the gap between those two facts is where the real damage accumulates. One bowl at a time every morning across the childhood of every kid whose parents made what they believed was the responsible choice. In 2015, a peer-reviewed study published in the journal Environmental Health found measurable changes in the gut microbiome of laboratory animals exposed to glyphosate at doses far below current regulatory limits. Not industrial exposure, not occupational doses. The kinds of residues appearing in the products on this list, consumed daily by children whose microbiomes are still developing. The researchers concluded that current regulatory limits do not account for subchronic low-dose exposure during developmental stages. That study has been cited over 400 times in subsequent peer-reviewed literature. The regulatory limits have not been updated to reflect it. You did everything right. You read the front of the box. You looked for the whole grain stamp. You chose the organic option. You paid more because you believed the premium reflected a different standard. The laboratory results describe something that standard was never actually designed to prevent. Now that you know what to avoid, here are the 3 brands that held up. These are not consolation picks. These are brands that test their finished products, publish the results, and source their grain differently from the ground up. Best option number 3. Bob's Red Mill Organic Oats. Bob's Red Mill does something almost no large cereal brand bothers to do. They publish their testing results publicly, including glyphosate testing on finished products. The company contracts with certified organic farms, maintains traceability from farm to bag, and has publicly committed to testing finished products rather than relying solely on supplier certifications. Independent testing on Bob's Red Mill organic oat products has consistently returned glyphosate results below the laboratory detection limit, not lower than the regulatory ceiling. Below the detection limit, meaning the laboratory's instruments, at their maximum sensitivity, cannot find it. Bob's Red Mill is employee-owned. No multinational acquisition, no corporate portfolio where sourcing decisions get made by a procurement team optimizing for margin. Bob Moore transferred ownership to his employees in 2010, and the company has operated under that structure since. The people making sourcing decisions are the same people whose names are on the products. That accountability is structural. The oat flavor is immediately different from anything on the avoid list. Nutty, slightly earthy, actually variable between batches in the way that real agricultural products are. Available at most major grocery chains. The price is higher than Quaker. That difference reflects what it actually costs to source oats without using glyphosate as a pre-harvest shortcut. Best option number 2. 1 Degree Organic Sprouted Oat O's. 1 Degree Organics does something almost no other cereal brand in America does. They publish the farm source for every single ingredient, scan the QR code on the package, and trace the grain back to the specific farm where it was grown. Not the country, not the region, the farm. 1 Degree carries the BioCheck non-glyphosate certified seal. This certification does not verify a process, it verifies a result. Glyphosate residues in the finished product are undetectable at the laboratory's detection limit. That is the standard every brand on the avoid list should be held to, and isn't. The ingredient list for their sprouted oat O's reads, organic sprouted whole oat flour, organic whole oat flour, sea salt. That's it. 3 ingredients, no added sugar, no synthetic dyes, no emulsifiers, no preservatives, nothing you'd need a chemistry background to identify. The sprouting process matters nutritionally in ways that most cereal processing destroys. Sprouting activates enzymes that break down phytic acid, the compound in whole grains that binds to minerals like iron, zinc, and calcium, and prevents the body from absorbing them. Processed cereals fortify with synthetic vitamins to compensate for what processing destroyed. Sprouted grain cereals preserve the nutrition that was there in the first place. Distribution is limited. You will likely need a natural grocery store or a direct online order. That inconvenience is real. It is also what happens when a brand hasn't handed its supply chain over to a corporation running a margin calculation that overrides the sourcing standard. Best option number 1. Purely Elizabeth Original Ancient Grain Granola. If the texture transition of sprouted grain cereals is a significant adjustment, or if you want a genuinely versatile clean everyday breakfast option, Purely Elizabeth is the most practical recommendation on this entire list. Purely Elizabeth was founded in 2009 and has maintained independent operations focused on clean sourcing since. Their products carry non-GMO project verification and third-party certification across their supply chain. Glyphosate testing on Purely Elizabeth products has returned results below laboratory detection limits in independent testing reviewed by Consumer Alert. The ingredient list of the original Ancient Grain granola reads: gluten-free oats, coconut sugar, coconut oil, quinoa crisps, amaranth, millet, chia seeds, vanilla extract, sea salt, cinnamon. Every item is recognizable as food. No ingredient list that requires cross-referencing with a chemistry database. No preservative system designed to hold freshness for a shelf life measured in years. The Ancient Grain base matters beyond the marketing. Quinoa, amaranth, and millet carry amino acid profiles and mineral densities that refined corn and wheat cereals process out of existence. A bowl of this actually keeps blood sugar stable across the morning in the way that the brands on the avoid list promise on the front and fail to deliver. Available at Whole Foods, Sprouts, Target, and online. Price per serving is higher than everything on the avoid list. That is the cost of a supply chain that sources what it promises. Before you close this, here is the one rule worth keeping from this entire investigation. Flip the box over. Read the ingredient list before you read the front. Any product with more than 7 ingredients, or any product where you cannot immediately identify every ingredient as a recognizable food, was built for the supply chain, not for the person eating it. Stop buying cereals where sugar appears more than once under different names. Ingredient splitting is not a formulation accident. It is a deliberate technique designed to obscure how sweet a product actually is. The whole grain stamp on the front means a certain percentage of the grain in the product is technically whole grain. It means nothing about how that grain was grown, what was sprayed on it before harvest, or whether any meaningful nutrition survived the processing that turned it into a shelf-stable flake. The certifications that require actual laboratory testing of the finished product, not just the process, are BioCheck non-glyphosate certified and non-GMO project verified. 1 is a promise about the process. 2 are proof about the result. Look for the difference. Every child in America eating from the brands on the avoid list is eating from a system that spent more money designing the front of the box than verifying what went into it. The front of the box was built to earn trust. The ingredient label describes what that trust actually bought. In the European Union, synthetic dyes linked to behavioral effects in children require mandatory on-package warnings. Pre-harvest glyphosate application on oats is heavily restricted. In the United States, both remain standard practice. The residues and the dyes sit in boxes next to cartoon characters designed to make your child ask for them by name. The brands that made the clean list are harder to find and cost more per box. That is the accurate trade-off, and Consumer Alert is not going to pretend otherwise. What the premium actually buys you: tested grain, published results, a supply chain where the people making sourcing decisions have their names on the product, is considerably more than what the brands on the avoid list are selling you at any price. 3 bowls a week from the clean list is better than 7 bowls a week from the avoid list at half the price. The math on a child's developing system does not work the same way as the math on the grocery bill. If this changed how you see the cereal aisle the next time you're standing in front of it, share it with a parent who's still buying from the avoid list because they genuinely believe they're making the responsible choice. They are trying to do the right thing. They just don't have the information yet. Now they can.